Let's talk about benefits. So the Tories are currently having an internal row about whether benefits should increase by the rate of inflation or by the rate of earning. I say internal row, it's more like a near civil war, with some Tories even calling for a general election, if you can believe that. Anyway, this has started a more general conversation about welfare, and along with it, the usual demonisation of people who are out of work, along with the false narrative that there are huge numbers of people sitting on benefits when they should be out working. A lot of people in work are currently fighting for an increase in wages to keep up with inflation as they watch their standard of living decreasing. So if benefits go up by the same rate as earnings, that will in effect be what's known as a real terms cut, because benefits will not be increasing in line with the cost of living. If you're already poor and inflation is rising, of all the people in the country, you have the least available resources to be able to cope with a changing financial picture. So let's have some facts. The last year I could find comprehensive statistics for was 2016, so bear in mind these figures are quite old, but it does still give a good overview of not just the cost of welfare, but how these costs break down. Also bear in mind that since 2016, unemployment has fallen. So, the total expenditure on benefits in 2016 was 264 billion, making up 34% of all government spending. Now that sounds like a huge figure, right? Probably thinking these benefit kings and queens are costing the country a bum. At least that's the narrative that the media and the Tories want people to go around repeating. But let's take a proper look at the figures. A massive 42% of the welfare budget, that's nearly half, at 111 billion, goes to pensioners. No other category of welfare is this big. And because pensioners tend to vote more than any other group, no government would ever dare talk about touching that pot of money. Have you ever heard any politician suggest pensioners cost too much, or that we should reduce spending on pensioners? It's not because they care about older people, it's because they care about older people's votes. In fact, governments are so worried about that vote, they've put a triple lock on that pot of money, meaning the rate of pensions must increase every year at the same rate as inflation, average wages, or 2.5%, whichever is the highest, by law. This is in recognition of the fact that pensioners need to have enough money to live on, and that money should increase at the same rate as the country's wealth, so their standard of living doesn't fall. No other state benefit has such a guarantee. Now, I'm not saying we should cut pensions, but it's worth just noting how pensions are never discussed in the same way as other benefits. It's all because pensioners vote in such big numbers. So back to the figures. We're left with 58% of the welfare budget. How does that break down? Well, 16% of that, that's 44 billion, is spent on disability and incapacity benefits. So that's people who are incapable of work, and I'm not sure even the Tories are nasty enough to want to reduce benefits for this group of people. That leaves 42% of the welfare budget, 18% of which, some 46 billion, is spent on family benefits like tax credits and child support. Again, another area for which there is popular support, and there is no narrative demonising this group. That is a recent fact though, because for a long time single mothers were demonised by the media and the government. This all changed with modern feminism and the Me Too movement, etc. Back to the figures. Another 13%, that's 35 billion, is spent on personal social care and other related benefits. That leaves 11%. 10% of that is going on housing benefit. 25 billion in total, with 9.3 billion of that going to private landlords. Have you ever heard a Tory politician talk about the cost to the country of housing benefit? Probably not. And the reason is because private landlords and homeowners in general tend to vote Conservative. So once again, this pot of money stays protected. How difficult would it be to introduce some legislation capping the cost of rent in the private sector? Labour would support it, and the Tories have an 80-seat majority. But they won't do that because that would be seen as betraying their base. The National Housing Federation reckon that if all private renters on housing benefit were in affordable housing, the government could save 1.5 billion a year. That's nearly the entire budget for unemployment benefit. But as I said, landlords are Tory voters, so you won't hear this being discussed because they won't take money out of their pockets. The funnel doesn't flow that way. So that's 99% of the welfare budget in 2016. What's left? Unemployment benefits. That's right. Just 1%, 2 billion a year, is spent on benefits for people out of work. Doesn't somehow match up with the idea of benefits Britain, or as Suella Braverman puts it, benefit street culture. does it? And don't be mistaken, she knows that only 1% of the welfare budget is spent on the unemployed. She's using the same old divide and conquer tactics the Tories always use. Get people who are struggling financially to blame other people who are struggling financially for their predicament, thereby ignoring those not struggling financially, yet holding the power to end everyone's financial struggle. Make no mistake, the Tory party is about funneling money, and it only flows one way. As we've seen with the VIP lanes for the procurement contracts during the pandemic, as well as the forgiving of billions of pounds of fraud against the government by businesses during the same period, or what we see with millions of pounds of subsidy being paid to in-profit train companies, or even more recently, with billions being borrowed to fund the energy price cap. That's money flowing from the public purse, that's our money, to the private sector. But I digress. The point is, most of the cost of welfare is pensions, and nobody talks about not uprating that with the cost of living. But that 1% that's spent on the unemployed, that is apparently where working class people should be focusing their anger. And I haven't even touched on the fact that 40% of people today claiming universal credit are in work. What did I just say? The state paying benefits to someone who's in work is in effect the state subsidising wages from the public purse to the private accounts via working class blood, sweat and tears. Have you ever heard a Tory saying employers need to pay people more so the state doesn't have to support them? Me neither. Employers tend to vote Tory. Wonder if that's anything to do with it. So you can see, whenever you hear politicians demonising the unemployed or suggesting that unemployment benefits are costing the country too much, just remember it's 1% of the welfare budget versus 10% for housing benefit and 42% for pensions. Follow me on YouTube and TikTok for more.